without spending any more time, Adel, once again, thank you so much for joining in. This is your second session with us. Thank you so much for that. Uh, Over to you from here.
Well, hi. Uh, well, first of all, thanks for having me. So I'm extremely happy to be here. Thank you for having me back. Uh, what I'm going to try to do this time, and I also know from last time that the vast majority of these are viewed after the fact. So I would love to show you a few things, talk to you about a few things, and then hopefully leave a lot of time for any kind of questions we can get into. Also, I'm developing this new philosophy that basically states it is okay to end a meeting early. So I will kind of get into it. Let me just share my screen with you real quick. Give you some talking points, go, and then we will discuss from there. All right, let me switch this around because you can see my, can you see my screen now?
Yes,
Take
we
it
can
as
see
yes,
you as
wonderful.
well as the screen.
All right. So again, thanks for being with me today. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is product management. Generically, is in my opinion, it's an art form much more than a science. Reason being that from a personal perspective, I am not a very good mechanical technical product manager, i.e. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of writing stories, of doing your typical product management things. What I would like to talk to you about, just like I did last time, is more of a high-level overview of practical needs and how to maneuver around the landscape at hand, how to, for the lack of a better word, how to get things done. And as such, I labeled it excelling in a profession of uncertainty and risk. And again, this is very near and dear to my heart because I am personally going through this at all times. So what I'm going to share with you today, something to remember, that these are my takeaways. This is what I have found to work and not work. I would like to share some of each. My tips, I don't know if they always align with what the commonly accepted practices in the market are or not. So just keep in mind everything you are hearing and seeing from me today comes from a place of personal experience. So I like to always focus on three things when we talk about product management. When we just talk about generally getting things done, which is the why, the who, and at the end of the day, how and why. Um, so who I am is, again, Adel Lelo. I am the senior principal product manager at Western Governors University. What that means in English is our portfolio, myself and a small group of product managers, along with an army of developers, engineers, and engineering directors. We oversee a series of technologies which allowed Western Governors University students to take assessments using online proctoring, using low stakes technologies, using performance assessments, in-house built assessments, as well as third-party licensed technologies. So our portfolio oversees roughly the delivery of about 3 to 3.5 million assessments per year, which roughly translates into one assessment every 6 seconds or so. As a result of this, it's a very high-touch portfolio. So that's why what I said, surviving or thriving in constant chaos and living with the risk and uncertainties, it is absolutely true of the portfolio which is under us right now. I have been with Western Governors University, which is a fully online, fully competency-based, fully accredited university out of Salt Lake City for a little over 10 years now. It's going to be 11 years in September, so almost 11 years. Throughout that time, I've held a lot of positions, mainly in technology, but not on the technology side. I think I shared this with this group last time as well. The Western Governors University's product or product management department is actually pretty new. It's only a few years old. Prior to that, we managed our products differently. We managed them from a very much distributed kind of an approach where every department, every area of the university was managing their own. And I am extremely passionate about education technology, specifically in my case. I believe education technology has the potential and is in the middle of changing the world, because I do believe that the easiest way to change the world is to extend education to the masses. Now, the other theme you will see throughout this talk, and just generally if you ever talk with me, is that I don't ever like to leave it at that level. Now, you know my name, you know where I work, you know why I work there, you know how long I have been there, and you know what I'm passionate about, but it is not the rest of the story. I am also a father, a brother, a son, a friend, a colleague of many. I'm a dreamer, also a realist. I'm a learner and sometimes a teacher. And I like to think I'm a listener, but I'm mostly a talker. Right. The reason this is important, and you will see this kind of throughout the rest of my talk, is that when it comes to dealing with a scientific approach to something, knowing just those high-level things is usually sufficient. When it comes down to dealing with the art of anything, a much more social science of anything, which I think product management is a part of, it's a different story. When at the end of the day, product management is basically dealing with people, and people are complex. So if all you know about me is that I'm an SPPM at Western Governors and I've been here for 10 years, and you know my education background and my passion, you don't know, you only have covered the surface. And when we deal with product management, we deal with the complexity of people. Now, the why. Why have I personally chosen to go into product management specifically, and more specifically within Western Governors University? Like I said, for starters, I'm driven by passion and a sense of belonging, and a sense of a capability of getting things done. But the reason I'm very passionate specifically about product management is that, in my mind, product or product management is where things get done. Often product managers are referred to mini CEOs. I don't like the term mini, because some companies' product department is larger than others' entire companies. Um, what that means is that we are in product, we are the doers, right? If it does not happen here, it does not happen. I have recently hired or helped hire a new product manager, and we kind of had to sit down and we were talking about what this position means. What is in product that what responsibility do you have in product that you have nowhere else? And that is, in product, you have no one else to look to get things done. You are the person everyone is complaining to. As a result, we are the doers. We are the people who are making things happen. And dealing with uncertainty and risk, I would like to kind of take away the negative, in many cases, negative thoughts about what that means. Usually people associate uncertainty and risk with bad things. And it makes sense. Most people, I think, do not like to deal with uncertainty or do not like to deal with risk. I think if any of us are not comfortable with dealing with uncertainty at all times, with not dealing with the risk that is associated with our jobs, we are in the wrong profession. Right? It is absolutely vital that we are not only okay and can survive dealing with uncertainty and dealing with risk. I would take it a step further, much further actually, in saying we as product managers should at all times be comfortable and be able to thrive with uncertainty and dealing with risk. So what I'd like to do, this is a very high level overview. I would like to get into about 4 or 5 very specific things that I think will help you deal with the uncertainty and risk. Preface this again with, these are my opinions, my findings. This is what has worked, and in some cases not worked for me over the years. This is something I am a huge advocate for. I'm not a huge believer in a product manager being simply the executioner, the order taker, basically the scrum master of projects and products. I'm a strong believer that a product manager should be an absolute expert, not just on their product, but be an absolute expert and have insights into the industry within which that product lives. So I believe that every product manager, and these are not in order of importance or preference, but this would be my number one if there was an order. The reason I believe that expertise are extremely important is what they eventually lead to. If you are an expert in your product and you are an expert in your field, it leads to confidence. I believe a very good product manager has a combination of competence and confidence. The confidence, competence comes from the technical and mechanical nature of being able to lead a product team and being able to gather requirements and execute them and communicate with individuals. But the expertise lead to something which, in my opinion, is much more important and tougher to teach. It leads to confidence. Now, I keep mentioning this in every talk I ever do, but I never get into the actual details of how this is possible. There's no shortcut to becoming an expert in your field. In my specific case, I was extremely lucky because 10 plus years ago, I was thrown into one area and accidentally, honestly, and just kind of stuck with it since. I kind of grew with the industry. But when people approach me and ask me specific questions about how to become a subject matter expert within their field, within the product, or within the industry, in which their product lives, a few pointers or few examples I always point to is the dreaded email subscriptions list. Uh, if you look at my inbox right now, I have about 18,000 emails. 11,000 of those are in the other folder, and I would say 7,000 of those are from random subscriptions to every single ed tech product management website I can get my hands on. Do I read most of them? No, but it is a surefire way to stay atop of what the industry is doing. You have to remember, there's a reason these people create these lists. They want to share information with you to eventually sell you something, most likely. So don't buy into that. But you are able to gather very important information. Publications. There are not a lot of fields out there, and trust me, I'm in a very small field. There are not a lot of fields out there that do not have their specific customized publication. So whatever area you're in, I promise you there is a publication, some kind of journal, some kind of website that talks about the ins and outs of the industry and the product with which you work. Social media. I often like to say, and I haven't been doing it myself so much lately, but social media, for all of its downsides, is one of the most beautiful things that has happened in our industry in a long, long time. Social media gives us the tools to basically conduct market research at all times. Now, let me clarify that. I do not mean official market research. What I mean is you can go to social media pages, which are in your product or in the industry in which your product lives, and you can get feedback from people for questions you did not even know you had. In order to conduct proper market research, oftentimes you need to know exactly what you want to know. Oftentimes, however, or more often, you will find out that what they actually want is something you didn't even think to ask for. I think social media is an absolutely incredible resource. So Twitter and the Facebook and the Instagram, I mean, there's a million out there. If you're listening to this 6 months from now, half of those are probably out of business. So there'll probably be some new ones. Social media, absolutely vital, absolutely important. Last one I want to mention is, excuse me, Google Alerts. It can get a little overwhelming and you would have to tweak it a little bit. But Google Alerts is absolutely beautiful. If you go to Google and you search for something, you can set it so that Google sends you a notification or an email. You can do it daily, weekly, monthly. You can do it every time something comes out. And it shoots you an email telling you that there is a new story, or here's a recap of the stories within the search criteria that you have entered. It is an absolutely wonderful way to stay on top of what your industry is doing and basically become and then stay an expert in your field. Again, the most important thing, in my opinion, becoming an expert in your field gives you confidence, which then gives you authority, basically, to be able to speak to your topic. Now, took a little bit longer, so I'll try to speed it up a bit going forward. The next important thing is, and I had to think about this one quite a bit and exactly how to say it, and you will see these will line up at some point. They will kind of combine and all make sense. It is to navigate the waters, or to navigate the landscape within which you exist, within which your product exists. Um, the way you need to become a subject matter expert on your product, meaning the ins and outs of your product and the industry within which your product exists, you also need to become a subject matter expert of the environment within which you exist, meaning your company, meaning your peers, meaning your customers, your stakeholders. So my suggestion here is to know your customers, which is an obvious no-brainer, but also know your stakeholders, know their tendencies. Remember how I opened this up with an introduction of me beyond who I am or what I am, which is a product management professional at Western Governors University. You know more about me. You know that I have at least a kid, right? You know, I'm passionate about certain things. You know, I have a brother. You know, I'm a son to somebody. What I have learned helps in these cases, in these scenarios, is to absolutely know and understand not just your customers, but your stakeholders. So if, let me tell you why. And I'll get into this a little bit more in the next one, but there will eventually come a time, I do not care what industry you work in, I don't care what your product is, I don't care who your stakeholders are and who your customers are, you are going to end up at some point having difficult conversations with those people. I will not get into the details of that because that comes next. But you will have difficult conversations with them. And let me ask you a question. Is it easier to have a difficult conversation with someone you know on a personal basis, or just someone who holds a title and you're kind of aware of what that title means? In my opinion, it's much more simple or much easier to have those conversations with people you know well and you know personally. You have to understand the impact and as it relates to the larger story, more specifically the who, what, and why. If this is one of those lines where being an order taker versus being a subject matter expert, which would then lead you to be able to drive the product, not just take orders from your customers and stakeholders. You need to understand how an action of you and or your team impacts the larger group. If my product is 10% of a much, much larger product, I need to understand how a delay in this area or how a change of plans in this area impacts the much larger picture. This helps you navigate, in my opinion, the waters, because now when you approach your stakeholders and your customers, etc., you understand what this means to them. You understand exactly what the impact is of what you are doing to what they are trying to do, which then leads me into the very next part, which again is one of the most important things here. That is to build the relationships. This is the theme of my whole talk, as you will be able to probably figure out. There's no easier way to navigate rough waters and navigate your landscape than when you are dealing with people for whom you have genuine respect, whom you understand, whom you know, and vice versa. They have genuine respect for you. They know that everything you do and say comes from a good place, that we believe in a common mission, that we are driving towards the same thing, and you're not doing anything just for the sake of not delivering on time or standing some kind of a ground. A few things that have worked for me over the years and also have completely backfired when I didn't do them over the years. It starts with transparency. There's absolutely nothing worse. There's no easier way, in my opinion, to lose someone's trust, not just in life, but specifically in product management in the professional landscape, than there is if you have a lack of transparency with your stakeholders and your customers. I'm a huge believer that everything you do professionally should be very, very visible. I sometimes take it a little too far, in my opinion. I am now asking all of our product managers to start recording daily stand-ups. Do you think a lot of our customers and stakeholders will care about the intricacies of what code we wrote something in? Probably not. Do you think most of them have the time to sit there for 10 to 15 minutes every day and tune into this meeting and listen to it? Probably not. If they did, we would just invite them to the meetings, right? But they don't. However, if they ever wanted to listen in, they could. That's the whole point. I think you cannot have enough transparency. Transparency builds trust, which leads me to the next point, and that is to teach. Um, if you see something flying in the air and you know it's an airplane or a bird, it doesn't matter what it is, but you know what it is, you are not suspicious, right? Now you don't have suspicion that this could do something or is something else. This is how all the flying saucer theories come up. But if you do not know what this flying thing is, we call it a UFO. It's not an unidentified flying object. I think it's a similar thing with people. If you are doing stuff behind the scenes and you're writing code or you are coloring the walls pink, but they do not understand why, they are not going to trust you on it. However, if they understand the what and the why and the when and the how and the whole 9 yards. In other words, if you're teaching people, they are more likely, just through their education, just through their knowledge of what you're doing, they're more likely to trust you. Also, there are some very practical things that come out of that. You have to answer less questions because you're proactively transparent with people. So you don't have to explain the same concept 18 times if you just tell everyone up front what you are doing. Now, the common mission one is one I mentioned before. This is part of the building trust. This is that we are all rowing in the same direction. This is that I'm working with you. We're working side by side. We're partners in this. We're team members in this. And the difficult conversations I mentioned before, didn't want to get into too many details. Again, I've done this for a few years. I've been in different areas. I've been in different industries before, and a lot of different roles within this company. And things, they go well most of the time. But it does not matter how polished of a product manager you are. It does not matter how conservative your estimates are. It does not matter how good your development team is. It does not matter. You will eventually hit a roadblock. You will eventually have competing interests. You will eventually have multiple people wanting different things at the exact same time, and you just don't have the bandwidth to do it, which means eventually you will have some difficult conversations with people. I have about 3 lined up the rest of today, and it's Friday. You will have these difficult conversations, and these difficult conversations are absolutely always much simpler to have with people you know and trust and believe in the same thing and with whom you have a mission in common, etc. Now, the next practical thing of being, in my opinion, a product manager, and more importantly, navigating these waters of uncertainty, this risk management. And in my opinion, there are some technical portions behind this. So effective requirements gathering or user acceptance gatherings help with this. But at the end of the day, and the higher you rise, I believe, in the product world, the more important this becomes. And that is the capability to tell a story, to tell a convincing story. Maybe convincing is out of place there because it almost sounds like you're trying to sell something to someone, but it is a story that goes beyond the what. If you tell me a story, or if you tell me that you need a yellow button at the bottom of page 18 or something like that, that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't have a motivation. I don't have a lot of motivation to go out there and build you this button. I probably will, but with the absolute least amount of motivation that I can gather. However, when you are able to tell me a story that this button is now going to allow my student to bypass 8 clicks of different buttons and allow them to enter their assessment 15 minutes earlier than they otherwise would be able to. Or if this one button allows me, I don't know, let's say, pay for my 3 different purchases from 3 different vendors at the exact same time, and you're saving me time, you're saving me frustration, but you're also keeping my customers safe. When you get into these stories, and I would in this case take it much beyond that. When you get into these stories, they become mesmerizing. Then people get to attach themselves to something. My approach to this is this: the higher level of complexity of something, the higher level of simplicity of your story is necessary. If you're trying to explain blockchain to me, and which I still don't understand, but if you're trying to explain blockchain to me, but your story is more complicated than I think blockchain itself is, then that story is useless. The higher level of complexity in something you're building, the lower level of complexity in your storytelling. So the higher level of simplicity. High complexity requires high simplicity, in my opinion. Otherwise, you tell too big of a story, too complicated of a story, and you're right back where you started, which is without a story, really. The story absolutely at all times needs to represent the vision of where you and your product is going, and most specifically, your product's place and the people's place within this vision. Now you're tying a large vision. Here's the dream world of what we're building. Here's how this thing we're building fits within this world. And here is how you fit within the product, within this world. Now you have people mesmerized. Now you have people who are bought in, who are compassionate to your wants and your needs, and who are going to be a true team member who will help you get there and be an ally. Also, with whom you will eventually have to have difficult discussions. So you have to be careful with that. But I think uh, convincing storytelling is one of the best ways to maneuver through the difficulties of product management, especially when you're building complex systems and complex products. Lastly, and this is my second theme, no matter how good you are at what you do, no matter how good your team is, no matter how anything else is planned, no matter how well funded you are, things will go wrong. The absolutely worst place um, to be with your customers and your stakeholders and just your partners within your industry and your business is in a place where you're playing a series of got yous, whereas someone is waiting for you to do something wrong and then they call you out on it because they don't trust that you will do what you said you will do. And sometimes if you're not telling a convincing story, and then they don't know what you're going to do, right? Point being that at the end of the day, things will go wrong. And the way to not only gain trust, but maintain trust and even sometimes regain trust, because this happens to us all the time. You have new stakeholders or something just went terribly, terribly wrong. And now you've lost the trust you have spent years building. And within that place, the worst place, in my opinion, is is in a place from where you think everything went well. Everything went swimmingly well. Whenever I have 10 people in a room and we all agree on something, I get nervous. There's no way the 10 smart people should agree on much, especially something complex. So whenever you finish a project, in this case, the product is never finished, but when you finish a project within a product or just ever so often, I'm a huge proponent of gaining feedback from as many people as possible. Reason being this, when you think it went very well, sometimes it didn't go well. So what you can do is actually use that as a positive. You can use that to regain trust or gain trust for the first time, whichever way you have it. I'm a huge proponent, and I think this is absolutely necessary for all of us at all times, to be absolutely open to the lessons we learn from the feedback and the mistakes we make. You will never, ever get it perfect. And the sooner we all realize that it is okay, we will never get it perfect, I believe it lowers a lot of the insecurities that a lot of people come into this job with. It lowers a lot of the nervousness. It just absolutely allows you to better do what you need to do, better calculate your risk, understand you will never get it perfect, understand you will mess up, and be absolutely open to learn from these experiences and use those experiences going forward. Guess what? Next time you'll make not the same, but different mistakes. I believe anyone that does not have the personality of being open to criticism, especially constructive criticism, is probably in the wrong place. So, like I said, I promised I would keep this pretty short. Um, and that is all I have prepared for you. I would love to take some time and answer any questions we have. I think last time the questions took about twice as long as the actual talk. So I'll give it right back to you.
Thank you so much, Adel. I love the details that you have spoken about. Especially, I think as a PM, I can completely relate with so many of details, nuances that you touched upon, right from knowing yourself, knowing the customer, knowing the customer is a pretty obvious thing that everybody says, but knowing yourself is something that I personally totally relate with. If you don't know yourself, you'll never be able to connect with your stakeholders, with the customers, etc. So
Yes.
fantastic. Thank you so much for the amazing insights that you brought in.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
have
Yeah,
about 25
I
minutes.
give me. I want to actually expand on that point because you said the thing about knowing yourself.
Sure.
There was a famous quote from a few years ago that, and this might or might not be related to this, but there's a famous quote from a few years ago that says, um, if you um, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything, right? So you have to be absolutely confident going into a situation with knowing who you are and what you have, right? So the knowing yourself, I think is
True.
as important, if not more important, than knowing your customers. You have to know your capabilities and abilities and be comfortable with who you are. And if you're not comfortable with some areas of who you are, that's room for improvement. That's just a more general takeaway.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like to say that I like to say the same thing with three circles. That you need to know yourself, then you need to know your company, and then you need to know your customers, because that's the sphere of influence that you have effectively.
Hmm.
And
Love that.
if you know
Love that.
this, if you know this really well, then you can actually progress really well. Okay, so let's start taking questions. So there's one second. Um, yes. Okay, so we have first question by Andres. He says, "How do you handle situations when where the client is reacting aggressively due to their resistance to change, which I think is natural most of the time, and how do you take control when things are already out of control?" That's a more generic
Mhm.
question connect to the first one.
No, that's a really good question. So this is you describing Andres. Thank you for that question. Describing the waters of uncertainty and risk here. That's one of the uncertainties and one of the risks. So long time ago, I was in sales. Actually, I was a couple of different sales gigs, but at one point I was doing forex exchange trading. And I had a really good sales manager at that time, and he taught me a lesson at that time that I've carried with me ever since. And I haven't been in sales in many, many years, but it's kind of a similar lesson, which is he said, selling is never a problem for me or for a good salesperson because you're not selling someone an idea. All you're doing is you're basically explaining to them how this benefits them, right? Don't think of it as selling, think about it as benefiting them. So if your customers are reacting negatively and especially aggressively to something new you have built, there might be different problems. So in my specific example, um, we listen to customers what they want before we build anything. So we don't go back and build something and then tell them, here's what we built for you. We build the things we build based around their requirements and their needs and wants and how we know the industry to be. So there's that. Maybe the concept that needs to change. But if you're building something, so what usually goes wrong in our area is we don't go far enough. So they will want something by November, but it's going to take till January. Those are the discussions I usually end up having to partake in. But I would say overall, it's a matter of explaining a greater benefit. If I would say if anyone at any point feels like you're pushing something down upon them, especially a paying customer, right? He's saying, what the heck, dude? I'm paying you money and you're pushing this out on me. That never works. I would say it's a matter of explaining the benefit of what you have built, and also being comfortable with the thing you have built, which means you will not react negatively or set yourself up for larger problems down the road. I hope that made sense. Um, I have a gift of beating around the bush and making a short answer very long sometimes.
No, I think that did make sense. If I can add to your answer quickly, actually, very recently I wrote an article about exactly the same thing. And the article is about developing influence and assertive leadership. So how do
Mhm.
you assert your influence and how do you create influence in such situation, in situations like this when somebody is becoming very aggressive?
Mhm.
Uh, that aggressive is usually a very dominant and very cold behavior. That's the type of behavior it is. And
Yes.
to overcome that, you have just three or four things. One is either you can raise your dominance as well, but without being aggressive or cold.
Mhm.
When you are becoming, when you are being dominant, you're just trying to be assertive. An assertive behavior is where you're trying to be professional and you're inquiring.
Yes.
So right, so if you do not get aggressive at the same time when the other person is being aggressive, you'll be able to calm the other person down and he'll be able to understand that this other person is not going to get instigated by my behavior.
Absolutely. You know, as I was saying earlier, I think the number one thing of product management is oftentimes confused to be very mechanical and technical. It's not. I believe the number one job in product management is dealing with people, and people are
True,
complex. And Ahad
true,
asked a very good question. Is this not leadership plus managerial excellence skills that applies in any profession? Absolutely.
true,
You're 100%
true.
correct. From my personal experience, they're necessary in just about every level, anywhere you work, regardless of what it is. I do believe product is one of those areas where you cannot hide, right? You can be good at certain things and bad at other things, and in certain professions you can only utilize some and not the others. I think in
Correct.
product, especially if you're dealing with high quantity, high cost, high impact products, there's no room to hide. All of these things will get exposed very, very quickly. But you make absolutely a really good point there.
Absolutely.
Should we
Okay,
get
so
to
we have
10 minutes?
another question by Pep.
Um,
uh, yes. So the
okay, so
question is, how
I
do
can.
you describe the strategy for your organization and what criteria you to build it?
Uh, that's a really, really good question. So we are extremely fortunate now because we are describing strategy at my company at a very, very high level. So our strategy is a vision, a mission that is many years out. We don't even put a numerical number around the number of years anymore, but it's no less than 5 to 10 years out. So we focus on basically what is considered to be a North Star at this point. We're saying this is the vision of the organization. This is where we are all going many years down the road. And then within that, it's almost like a pyramid thing. Within that, we have different portfolios of products and value streams. And within those portfolios, now I know what my portfolio needs to do to get my area to that point. And my counterparts knows exactly what their portfolio needs to do to get to that point. And we break it all the way down to literally the story level, the sprint level. So when our developers are sitting in the office as we speak, writing code, well, we don't do a super good job of this, but we're trying to. This is part of the storytelling. The idea is that when someone is writing a piece of code right now, they know exactly what this means for this long-term vision 5 or 10 years from now. So I'm not just sitting and doing random code writing. I'm taking our organization to this special place, even though if it's literally I'm changing the color of a button or something. So that's how we do it. You have to start with an absolute high level. Otherwise, um, you go all over the place, right? So if me and my counterpart at Western Governors are not rowing into the same direction, I might be building my portfolio to go here, and she's building hers to go here. And 5 years from now, we learn that nothing works with each other, and we're going in the wrong direction. So high level um, uh, vision is absolutely necessary. Now, the second part of the question is, where do you see the concept of growth fitting within the PM role? Uh, I'm not sure if you want to clarify that, if you mean personal growth or industry growth or all of the above or whichever part you want there. But if you mean personal growth, I think it's absolutely essential. This is, again, one of those areas. It's kind of like being, if you're in stock exchange, for example. Oh, there you go. Why? Analytics, growth, hacking. Yeah, okay, that's awesome. But this is one of those areas where um, it is what you knew last week is not as important this week as what's happened over the past week or so. Um, Okay, analytics, growth hacking. All right, let's just talk about analytics for a second. From my perspective, I live and die by analytics. Um, Analytics give you an indication of the health of your product. So I know, for example, that one of my products is supposed to deliver roughly 40,000 assessments over the last 7 days. When I look in on Monday morning and I see that we had, I'm just throwing numbers out here, 200 phone calls over the past 7 days from students, in my case, students who had technical issues with this product. The 200 doesn't mean anything to me until I know that I also delivered 40,000 assessments. I can scale, or I can look at the health of my product based on these analytics. So I think analytics in general are by far the easiest way to at all times identify the health of your product, but also identify very clearly whether your product is or is not successful. My organization was not very good at this not long ago, and we're still learning. But oftentimes we would build something, roll something out, get 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 people on it, and we don't know if it was successful. We really didn't know. We have gotten better, and I think it is absolute cornerstone of knowing whether you're building the correct thing. So if I'm looking at, let's say I have a turnaround time of something that's like 18 and a half hours, and now I have a goal, my vision is to lower that 18 and a half hours to a turnaround time of 12 hours. I wouldn't have known to go there if I didn't know it was 18 and a half hours to start with. I think analytics, and I am a bit of a data geek, analytics are absolutely essential to not knowing just what you're doing right now, but what the next move is and whether what you're doing is impactful and successful. I hope that answers that question. Here's a good question. What advice would you give to one who has no product management experience and want to make a career in product management? Now that is an awesome question. Let me tell you a quick story. Well, not even quick story. It's literally a sentence. I have no formal product management experience or training. I have a lot of product management experience, but no training. I would, trust me, we're hiring product managers at Western Governors all the time. It is very difficult to find a professional product manager. Product management as an industry, widely accepted and known and pursued area of work is actually pretty recent, pretty new, compared to some of the others. There were stock traders for 300 years. There were always product managers, but they were not always known as product managers. Some of the best product managers I know are former project managers. It's a little different actually completely different mindset there, but similar skills, at least the mechanical and technical skills. So what I would say is I would not be discouraged by the fact that let's say you don't have any professional product management experience, because at the end of the day, if you listen to what I was saying here, the soft skills, we keep calling them soft skills, are by far the most important in product management. However, there are things you can do out there. There are certifications, because I also know of companies who will not hire anyone because they don't have a specific checkbox they can check. So I know there's a few certifications, a CSPO, I think. CSPO certification is a very good one. One of our product managers just completed it, really enjoyed it. And again, he's been product manager for years, but now he just went and completed that certification. And he said it was a very good tool, a very good it was a very good learning experience for him to do that. So certifications like a CSPO would be wonderful. I would say there are a lot of courses out there that you can study up on for a long time and take certifications if you want. I honestly think if you have project management skills, you should be just totally fine as a product manager from the technical and mechanical side. The soft skills the soft skills are just what they are. That's what we're talking about today. I'm not sure how to teach those. I think those are more difficult to teach, other than if you just follow these steps of figuring out what you want to do, making yourself an absolute expert in that field, and making an impact on that company. But for starters, I would pursue project management certifications and courses and classes, because those are the things that are tangible. Those are the things that companies will look for when hiring a product manager, especially if hiring a product manager in a very technical area. Which leads me to one last point. See, I told you, I can tell it can take me forever to answer a simple question. One last point I would make there is, you already know what you are good at. And if you go into what you are already good at, so let's say, I don't know, let's say you're good at building cell phones, right? Or you're really knowledgeable about cell phones and the inner workings of a cell phone right now, whether you watched it on YouTube or somewhere else. Instead of looking for any opening for a product manager position, why not go look for a specific opening for product manager position that for a company where the product is building cell phones or building cell phone accessories? Because now you already bring with you the subject matter expertise that you cannot teach, but you can. It just takes a very long time. Now, if you combine that with certification and project management, I think you're golden. That would be, I think if I was getting into it right now, that's what I would do. I would go find a company that has a product or a product manager need in something I'm passionate and good at, and reverse engineer the whole thing. All right, Aman asks, do we have any really good course to improve soft skills or any certifications for soft skills? I don't, that's not for me probably, right, that question? Because I don't have any courses. In case you're asking me, I would say that the CSPO certification would be a really good one to look at. I'm not sure if they're available everywhere. I know it's almost like it's a traveling course that goes from area to area. And I know they're back in Salt Lake City because I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. They're back in the fall, and I'm fully attending to go there. It never hurts to have too many mechanical skills on hand. All right. Do we have any other questions? Did I lose everyone?
Yeah, I think we don't have any more questions. So first of all, thanks a lot, Adel, for such an insightful session. And for those who don't know, Adel has conducted our webinars with us in the past as well. And he has always been most sought of webinars. So I'm sure everyone would have some concrete takeaways from the session. And Adel, we would love to have you once again.
Anytime. Just next time, give me a topic I can that's more mechanical, because otherwise, you know me, I go all over the place, except never answer any questions.
Right. And lastly, thanks to all the participants for joining us. And you can anytime reach out to Adel if you have any queries related to product management. And I also want to inform you that there are many such amazing webinars lined up for every month. So you can check them out by visiting our website. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So we'll be sharing recording of this session and all our product talks at our YouTube channel. And we have built a global community of product managers on Slack. So I'll share the link in description. You all can join our product community as well. It's free for all. And once again, thanks Adel, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and maybe we'll talk again. Have a good rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever in the world we all are. I'm going to work.